Hey friends, it's me. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about the situation in Ukraine. In 2006, Israel destroyed the civil infrastructure in Lebanon, and they attacked civilians, of course, because that's where civil infrastructure exists, and they used cluster bombs and things like that. The reason why is that Israel is the world's largest welfare state. No other country in the world receives more international aid than Israel, both per capita and in total amount, and especially from the United States. But with all that international aid, Israel has been languishing when it comes to civil infrastructure. For example, the joke about putting the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem is why would why was the diplomat late for work? And the answer is because his donkey got stuck in traffic. So because they lack civil infrastructure in Israel, um, you're going to have a lot of power outages and things like that. The exception is Tel Aviv. The reason why Tel Aviv is an exception is because during the Palestinian Mandate, the British built the civil infrastructure of Tel Aviv, and so it supports modern city life. So the reason why, despite all of this international aid, Israel has still been languishing when it comes to civil infrastructure is that the money gets siphoned off. And, that's a scandal, but the people are kept ignorant of it by, getting them to believe that there is a desperate struggle with the helpless Palestinians confined to their political concentration camps, and that all efforts need to be focused on that, and that the ideal lifestyle is to live on a kibbutz farm, not to have all of these modern things in the first place. But what happened with Lebanon was that right across the border from Israel, the Lebanese, with what very little money they have, they were doing an amazing job of building civil infrastructure, modern power plants, uh, modern apartment buildings in the city, schools, hospitals, uh, water and sanitation. And the Israelis were starting to scratch their heads. They were asking questions like, how can the Lebanese build all this stuff when we're still living on kibbutz farms? And so it was an important question that the rich people in Israel who've been siphoning off this aid money, they decided that the thing to do would be to destroy the counterexample. So they bombed all of the civil infrastructure. They took out the apartment buildings, the hospitals, the schools, and the power plants. And with the war in Ukraine, we see this destruction of civil infrastructure, and of course civilians, because civilians are around civil infrastructure. We see really great coverage of this, like with CNN. I usually wouldn't watch CNN, but they've done a great job of covering the war in Ukraine. But when it came to Israel's destruction of Lebanon, there was a complete blackout of the news here in the United States. In fact, the United States federal government was literally snatching people off the street. For example, there were a couple of satellite dish salesmen. They had their own satellite company in New York City, and they were saying, if you buy certain equipment and you happen to punch in certain satellite codes, you'll be getting news broadcasts from the Middle East, and you'll get to see what is actually going on, what the Israelis are doing to the Lebanese civilians. Well, they were snatched off the street by the federal government immediately and jailed for promoting terrorism. So, with the shoe on the other foot, what we saw here in the United States during the war of Israel against Lebanon, that's the same kind of coverage that the Russians are getting regarding the Russian war on Ukraine. Why is Russia destroying Ukraine's civil infrastructure? Well, the reason is that Russia has a lot of exportable high-value resources like energy and certain minerals. And there's a lot of corruption economically within Russia. And so there's been a lot of rich people who have been getting this wealth. Now, Ukraine and Russia have a very similar heritage. A lot of Ukrainians understand or even speak Russian. Russia and Ukraine used to both be part of the former Soviet Union. So with Ukraine next door, you have to realize that not all Russians live in Moscow. A lot of Russians live basically an agrarian lifestyle still. It's not quite like the kibbutz farms in Israel, but it's not modern. A lot of places don't even have paved roads. They have dirt roads going into their towns and villages. So they look across the border and they see the Ukrainians doing all of these amazing things. They would love to have, a maternity and children's hospital with all the modern medical equipment like the Ukrainians do. They have that in Moscow, but they don't have it in the little villages that border Ukraine, places that they don't even have paved roads, which, you think, of course, they have paved roads. They don't have paved roads in a lot of Russia. Ukraine has paved roads all over the place. So Russians have been asking questions about Ukraine, like how come the Ukrainians have all this stuff, and they see things like Ukraine's Got Talent, on YouTube and stuff like that, and they wonder why don't they have this stuff. So then, if they ask questions, they're going to be asking, hey, where's all our money going? Well, it's going to rich Russians, to the Russian billionaires. People sometimes say oligarch, but oligarch can mean anything. Most of the oligarchs are actually errand boys for the millionaires, are errand boys for the billionaires. So they get paid millions of dollars to make favorable deals within the government for the rich billionaires. So that's why Russia is targeting Ukraine's civil infrastructure. That's what the whole so-called war or military operation is about. The part about NATO and all that is actually a red herring. So a red herring is when you're chasing a false excuse. Go follow this excuse, but that's not actually why they're doing it. They're doing it because if they don't destroy Ukraine's civil infrastructure, Russians will continue to ask questions about, why don't they have all this stuff? How come Ukrainians can have all this, but not Russians? So that's what's going on in Ukraine. With the billionaires in Russia, some people think that, this is terrible for them. They're getting sanctions and all that. Let's do the math. If the ruble is devalued by a third, so the ruble is the currency in Russia. If it's devalued by a third, it's like when your stock goes down. If your stock goes down by a third, then to get back where it was, it has to go up by 50%. So yeah, so the person who still has the undervalued stock has 1.5 times as much as the person who has the devalued stock. You think of it like that, except it's currency. So let's say that you're a Russian who sells bread, and a pallet of bread costs, let's say $100. So that's 7,700 rubles. And let's say you're going to sell a barrel of oil for $100. So that's 7,700 rubles. But then the ruble is devalued. So the bread guy is still getting 7,700 rubles, we'll neglect inflation. But the oil guy, because the oil is denominated in foreign currency, then after he gets paid in foreign currency and cashes that in for rubles, he has 1.5 times as many rubles as the bread guy. So he now has 50% more leverage than the bread guy. So with the oil and other commodities, with the oil, what's happened is not only are the rich Russians getting more money stuffed in their pockets from the hike in oil prices and other commodity prices, but the boots that they have to crush their fellow Russian citizens have gotten bigger because of the ruble's devaluation. So you have to really think about what's going on there. For them, it's actually a pretty good deal. Now you hear things about like, Russia's richest billionaire just had his $70 million yacht seized. Well, $70 million is a drop in the bucket for them. And, with all the added money that they're making now and all the increased economic leverage they have over their fellow Russians, he was probably going to buy a new yacht anyway. So you have to really think about, the reality of information and reporting, because we rely on good reporting. Things like what happened in the 2006 attack of Lebanon by Israel, it was not attended by good reporting here in the United States. And that's the same kind of information blackout that right now the Russians are facing, meaning the everyday Russian citizens are not getting the proper reporting. So I think you need to look at the full picture, and we need to start considering the importance of everybody having free access to information.